In Twin Peaks, the discovery of Laura Palmer's body triggers an investigation that exposes the secrets of a town that's not as normal as it seems.
And I sound like this?
In Lost, a commercial airliner crashes on a tropical island. Not a normal island, but one full of strange, hostile forces. And in The Leftovers, a mother is running errands when she realizes that her baby has suddenly vanished, along with 2% of the world's population. Great mystery shows begin with fascinating secrets that they gradually, but not always fully, divulge. They give their main characters a limited amount of information to start them on their way, and the audience joins the journey with the same knowledge. Severance now follows this rich tradition in TV history by weaving a surreal, twisty story that brings new meaning to work-life balance. From baby goats to the, quote, mysterious and important work being done at Lumen Industries, Severance raises questions that inspire spectators to search for clues in every minor detail. The Apple TV series has elevated its game in its second season, finding new ways to position its viewers right in the heart of its many mysteries. But understanding how requires a little bit of perspective. My name is Daniel Chin, and I'm a staff writer at The Ringer. In this video essay, I'm going to discuss how Season 2 of Severance uses perspective to put its audience in the same state of mind as its characters, and also how that use of perspective heightens the tension of its mysteries. We'll look at how this works on two levels. The first is filmmaking, where we'll examine a few visual techniques that Severance employs to simulate the experience of its characters. The second is storytelling. While filmmaking always plays a role in storytelling, Severance has also experimented with narrative structure. The idea is to keep viewers guessing, to make them question what they're seeing on screen at all times. But before we break down these topics, let's take a minute to recap what the show is all about. Severance follows Mark Scout, an employee at a biotech company called Lumen Industries, after he undergoes the controversial severance procedure. This medical operation allows Lumen employees to essentially split their consciousness, including their memories, in two. One half of their identity, known as their innie, exists only within the workplace. The other half, known as their outie, exists only outside of work. These distinct personalities are separate from each other. Innies know nothing about their outies or the world outside of the office.
Think about it. Okay, if our outies are out there severing their brains, shit must have gotten pretty bad. Famine, plagues, etc. So what is a desperate humanity to do?
Populate the sea?
Populate the sea.
Meanwhile, outies have no knowledge of what happens between when they clock in and out of Lumen. It creates a mystery box that allows the team behind Severance to craft intricate puzzles for the characters and the viewers to solve together. The gorgeous cinematography of Severance takes full advantage of the series' impressive production design, from the framing of each image to the positioning of characters. Severance uses a wide variety of techniques to convey subjective perspectives, which helps ground certain scenes in the emotional or mental state of a particular character. I'm going to highlight a few scenes from Season 2 that illustrate how the series has achieved this goal in spectacular fashion. Here's where I should also issue a warning. From this point on, I'll be discussing spoilers from the second season of Severance, so if you haven't caught up, I suggest you save this video for later. Let's focus on the filmmaking aspect first. In Season 2, the flashiest camera work comes in the fantastic opening scene of the premiere. It's a genius sequence by EP and director Ben Stiller, cinematographer Jessica Lee Gagne, and the entire crew. Almost 3 years had passed in our world since the end of Season 1, so the team behind Severance wanted to make sure they returned with a bang. Producing this scene alone took 4 to 5 months. It follows Mark as he returns to Lumen for the first time since he and the MDR team triggered the OTC protocol, which allowed them to temporarily trade places with their outies. Through a combination of dynamic camera movement, point-of-view shots, and over-the-shoulder shots, the audience is thrown back into the world of Severance in a disorienting frenzy. The visuals mimic Mark's frantic, almost primal instinct to search for Miss Casey, whom he's just discovered is his outie's supposedly dead wife, Gemma. There's another scene that serves as an even better, more subtle example of the show's use of cinematography to provide perspective. In Episode 5, directed by Sam Donovan, we see another instance of an innie returning to the severed floor for the first time in the season. Moments after waking up in the midst of being drowned in the previous episode, Helly R finds herself suddenly back in the Lumen elevator. The second the perspective switches from Helena Egan to Helly R, the camera becomes noticeably shaky, and it remains that way for the duration of the scene. We cut to Helly's point of view as she sees Miss Huang waiting for her, which only intensifies this unnerving, wobbly sensation. After Helly exits the elevator, Donovan cuts to a two-shot, which is the filmmaking term for a shot that captures two actors in the frame. This helps draw attention to the power dynamic between Miss Huang and Helly. Although Miss Huang is physically smaller than Helly, she appears larger in the frame because the actor is standing closer to the camera in the foreground. Helena Egan, the outie, might be Miss Huang's boss, but here Miss Huang has the authority over Helly, the innie. Even before this scene, we knew that the woman in the elevator was in fact Helly, rather than her outie pretending to be her, as in previous episodes. And we knew this because we were allowed to see the events leading up to it, in which Helena receives orders from the board to let Helly regain control of their shared body. But Severance erases any doubts, in the viewer's mind, if not Mark's, by framing the scene from Helly's perspective. Britt Lauer's performance, along with the shakiness of the camera, and the way Helly is shown to be smaller and less powerful than her new manager, reinforces the fact that we're now watching Helly struggle to reorient herself after a traumatic sequence of events. The other scene I'll highlight comes from episode 4, Woe's Hollow, the one with the work retreat from hell, directed again by Stiller. This episode features several stylistic flourishes that we could discuss. They include the dissolves that transition between scenes, which evoke the dreamlike quality that the Orpo evokes for the innies. There are also the horror elements that emphasize how scary and unfamiliar this experience is for them, like Irving's nightmare sequence, where he meets Woe herself. But let's drill down on the opening scene, which sets up Woe's Hollow as an Irving episode from the jump. The very first shot signals to us that Irving's Audi has just been replaced by his innie. That's established by the sound of the elevator ding and the use of a dolly zoom. The camera zooms out from Irving while the lens pushes in to create this wider lens image of John Turturro's character. We've seen this motif used throughout the series in and outside of the Lumen office, so we're well aware of what it symbolizes, even out here in the wilderness. Stiller then zooms out from this tight close-up on Irving's face to these increasingly wide, expansive shots of the environment surrounding him. Irving's tiny body is contrasted with the massive scale of the frozen landscape, and this effect continues as Irving sees Mark in the distance and vice versa. Irving and the rest of the MDR team have been dropped in a shocking, unfamiliar situation. They have no idea where they are or how they got there. The cinematography helps establish how overwhelming the scale of this environment is to them. After all, almost the entirety of their existence has been spent within the walls of the Lumen office.
Holy shit! Out fucking side! Oh my god, I knew there was no actual ceiling, but this is fucking insane!
But Severance isn't just one of the most impressive shows on TV because of camera work or fancy editing. As I said earlier, it's also because of innovative storytelling. For an article at The Ringer, creator and writer Dan Erickson spoke to journalist Jay Kleinman about some of the challenges that come with writing a mystery box series, saying, quote, "Asking intriguing questions is the easy part. Most anyone could do that. It's much harder to provide an answer that hits that incredibly small sweet spot of telling just enough that people feel satisfied and also not taking the magic out of it by over-explaining it to death. Finding that sweet spot is a tall order that even great shows like Lost struggle to achieve. But Severance has hit its marks thus far. The show is shrewd in how it paces the answers to its questions. It doesn't withhold them so stingily that it frustrates its fans, nor does it overwhelm them with rapid or tidy revelations. Instead, Severance dispenses its solutions slowly enough for the audience to live with the characters and share in their sense of wonder. Perspective has been a key part of this equation since the series premiere, when Helly woke up in the middle of an empty conference room. The series is written in such a way that the innies and the audience often uncover information about the show's world simultaneously, whether it's how Lumen's severed floor operates, or what the Audis' lives are like away from work. Even an actor like Tremel Tillman, who plays Seth Milchek, has a limited understanding of the world of Severance. Here's what Tillman said about this challenge during an interview with NPR's Bullseye.
I had to trust that the character knew where to go. This is one of the rare instances where the character knows more than the actor. And with that, there was a lot of conviction, a lot of belief, a lot of trust that I am stepping into a character that is embodying a world that he fully believes in.
For much of the first season, Helly, Dylan, and Irving know almost nothing about their Audis, and neither do we. That sustained mystery makes the finale's big twist. The Audi Helena is a member of the Egans, the family that runs Lumen Industries, all the more stunning. But in Season 2, Severance plays with this dynamic in new ways. While each episode of the first season divides its time between the office and the outside world, the first 2 installments of the second season change that narrative structure. In the premiere, Mark returns to the office to find that his MDR teammates have been replaced by other Severed employees. As Mark tries to get his friends back, the series stays with him even as each of his workdays ends. Instead of switching to the perspective of his Audi when he clocks out, as the show usually does, the episode continues to track innie Mark as his next shift begins, uninterrupted. It's the first time that we really get to experience what it's like for an innie to never get to truly sleep.
I find it helps to focus on the effects of sleep since we don't actually get to experience it. You may feel rejuvenated or happy, less tense in the shoulders, spry.
Because we're confined to the office with Mark's innie, we too are confined from an outside perspective, which is what it's like for innies all the time. Mr. Milchek lies to Mark about everything, from how much time has passed since his team's uprising at the end of Season 1, to how the innies have all become celebrities for blowing the whistle on Lumen. Milchek even produces a fake newspaper as proof. With hindsight, we comprehend the deception. But when the episode aired, we were left to question what we were told, just like Mark. In episode 2, Severance flips this narrative structure, limiting our perspective to life outside the office. Although the audience retains its knowledge of previous episodes' events, this shift allows us to see what being severed is like for the Audis. While Audi Mark has freedom that his other half lacks, his awareness of what happens at Lumen is subject to his employer's whims, and after his innie held up a photo of his Audi's dead wife at a crowded party and screamed, "She's alive!" Audi Mark and his sister have some pretty pressing questions that only Lumen can answer. By temporarily restricting our access to life inside the office, Severance's storytellers show us how maddening it must be for the Audis to live like this. Let's wrap up with a pair of recent examples of how the show's filmmaking and storytelling often work in tandem to capture the perspective of its characters. The first is from episode 6, Attila. After Mark's nose starts bleeding while making out with Helly, super gross for Helly by the way, they visit Miss Huang for some medical assistance. But as Miss Huang checks his blood pressure, Mark's realities inside and outside of the office begin to blur together, a side effect of the reintegration process. Sound, editing, and point of view shots join forces to represent this flickering between the perspectives of Mark's innie and Audi. Mark sees and hears Miss Huang while being examined by Ragabi in his basement, just as he's seeing and hearing Ragabi in the office with Miss Huang. This crossover happens midway through the episode, and almost everything leading up to it took place within the office. But the rest of the episode is set in the outside world. Audi Mark can't remember what happened next, and the audience feels the same frustration. It's an abrupt, yet clever way for Severance to shift to the Audi's plotlines, while leaving viewers with questions about what Miss Huang may suspect. And lastly, let's take a look at episode 7. More than any other episode, Shikai Bardo uses its visuals to dictate and inform the story that's unfolding on screen. Directed by cinematographer Jessica Lee Gagne, episode 7 finally reveals what Lumen has been doing to Gemma on the testing floor, as well as how Gemma and Mark first met. Gagne brings to life a love story that is beautiful and tragic, interspersing flashbacks that span 5 years with scenes of the present-day trials that both Gemma and Mark are facing. We see much of this episode from Gemma's perspective, as she completes a series of bizarre experiments in rooms at Lumen that are named after the files that innie Mark has been refining. Gagne seamlessly transitions between Gemma's experience and those of her multiple innies, juxtaposing her memories with her present-day captivity in a visual stream of consciousness. The director chose to shoot the flashback sequences on film to evoke nostalgia and create the feeling that we're watching a home video of Gemma and Mark's lives together. At one point, a fragmented montage shows how Gemma and Mark fell in love. That bleeds into another happy scene that displays how close they were to Devon and Rickon. But as the camera zooms in on Gemma's smiling face at the end of the scene, the light in the room and the light in her eyes begin to fade. This leads into Gemma's recollection of her and Mark's struggles to conceive a child, and how that started to ruin their marriage and the joy in their lives. Even though episode 7 is complicated and challenging to follow, Severance doesn't ever over-explain anything that's happening on screen, whether it's related to Gemma's miscarriage or the night that Gemma supposedly died. Instead, it shows just enough for the audience to understand these characters' relationships, the hell that Gemma is trapped in, and the heartbreak that pushed Mark into getting severed in the first place. Compelling perspectives are crucial to any satisfying story, but shifts in perspective are an especially useful tool in a series that seeks to create and sustain fascinating mysteries around sympathetic characters. Severance has been putting on a masterclass in this respect. As the series begins to answer some of its biggest questions, like what those baby goats are really for, its creators will continue to play with perspective to draw their audience into the drama. Thanks for watching.